Hi everyone, Charlie here to introduce a special episode of the Kingsgrove Sports Podcast for you this week. Recently, Gus Worland paid a visit to Kingsgrove Sports to film an episode of his new show, The Cricket Tragic, and he was kind enough to invite our team to record an episode of the KSC Podcast at Triple M Studios. Since we first started this podcast, we've been interested in speaking about the topic of mental health. It's an issue facing millions of people from all walks of life, even in the world of sport. And it's an issue that Gus also has a lot invested in with his Gotcha for Life Foundation, which encourages a positive attitude about mental health, especially among men. So we took this great opportunity to have Gus join us for our discussion on the topic of mental health. We'd like to once again say thank you to Gus and the wonderful team at Triple M for having us in their studios. And most importantly, if you're struggling with these issues, or if you know someone else who is struggling with depression, anxiety, thoughts of suicide, or any other mental or emotional distress, we want you to know that there are people there to help you. There are links to helpful resources in the description of this episode, including Gus's foundation at gotchaforlife.org. Please, if you or anyone else that you know is suffering any kind of emotional distress, don't hesitate. Get in contact. Seek help. It is okay to not be okay. So with that in mind, here's our podcast on mental health with special guest Gus Worland. Thank you very much for listening and enjoy the show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 12 of the Kingsgrove Sports Podcast. It's a special edition this week. We have a very special guest with us, Gus Worland. How are you, Gus?
G'day, very well. Thanks for having me, boys.
Good. We've also got Hamish.
Morning.
How are you, mate?
I'm well today.
Good. And producer Nick.
Hey guys, good morning everybody.
Good morning.
Today's show is going to be slightly different to what we've done before in that we're taking on a pretty serious topic in mental health. And Gus has had quite a lot to do with that in the past. Why don't you start, Gus, by giving us a little bit of background and how you perhaps got into that topic?
Yeah, of course. There was a show on the ABC called Man Up, which I did about 3 years ago now. Off the back of that, I started working with Triple M within the breakfast show to start talking about men's mental health a little bit more. 10 years ago when we started the show, I reckon if I brought it up in a planning meeting, it just would have been shot down. It's not something we talked about. But after Man Up, I really challenged masculinity in this country and whether or not it's good to be the old school Aussie bloke where she'll be right, let me just take everything on myself. I'm not going to share how I truly feel about anything. I don't think that works. We're losing 6 beautiful Aussie blokes every single day. It's the number one way to lose your life now if you're between 15 and 45, which, you're shaking your head, Hamish. That's exactly what I said when I was told about it. So I thought, well, I'm going to start a foundation. So we've got a foundation now called Gotcha for Life. Been running a couple of years. It's a couple of $1 million foundation already because people understand the message we've got, which is quite a simple one, which is men, it's awesome to be an Aussie man. Let's embrace that. But there's also a part of us that we've got to realise is a real weakness, and that is the fact that we don't share how we truly feel about anything with anyone. So I believe that suicide is the death of loneliness. A lot of mental health is linked to loneliness. So I want every Aussie bloke to find one person in their life that they can talk to, warts and all, about anything. Mm-hmm. Nothing, Hamish, nothing is off limits with at least one person in your life. If you have more than one, that is awesome. But if you don't have one, find that.
Yeah, I've been in an interesting situation coaching in the academy at Kingsgrove where there have been a lot more guys coming to me during the middle of the day for coaching sessions, and I've since found out they're actually suffering from depression and they're either taking time off work or they're using the cricket side of things as a means of therapy, I guess. And a lot of them over time have then started to open up to me, and I've then begun to wonder that is maybe perhaps a part of the problem, the fact that sometimes we don't want to admit these things to our friends or family, but perhaps someone in a coaching or a mentoring role should take on that role, and whether it should be a part of coach education, because so much of this stuff is prevalent in sport, as we know now.
There's no doubt in my world that someone who is a coach, someone who is a teacher, someone who's in a position where they have some sort of authority, that is a great place for you to go. I'm saying grab anyone you possibly can, and as many people as you can if you like. Sometimes blokes really struggle. Like sometimes I might be asked something, I don't have the answer, so it might be better to ask another one of my mates. Just be open to find someone, but once you find that person, well, then hold on to them and let them know exactly what you are to them, what it means to them, and how open, how vulnerable, and how honest you're going to be with them, because it could save your life one day.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, if we slightly rewind, we sort of jumped straight into the topic a little bit there. Obviously, most of us get into cricket or any kind of amateur sport because we enjoy it, and it comes from a place of fun.
Yeah.
Perhaps you can give us your background in cricket and how you got into cricket and your playing career.
Yeah, my playing career. I was about 8 when I first started playing cricket, and I went to school and I got in the 11As like the year or so after. But there was no proper games until the under 11s. So I got in the 11As, and 8 out of those 11 blokes were at my wedding when I was 26.
Wow.
So that to me is cricket.
Not surprised.
You know, I just love my teammates. We just had this great bond. There's 4 of them I still walk with every single day on a Sunday. The other ones that don't walk with us because they're too far away from Sydney, we'd all be together. We just had this unbelievable team that end up being in the prep first, then 13As, 14As, 15As. I made the combined associated schools team out of Knox when I was in 4th form and in 5th form, and did okay, but I knew probably after that New South Wales cricketing week that I wasn't ever going to play for Australia, because we played Mark Waugh, Steve Waugh and Michael Slater in one innings, and they got 300 odd for one, they all got hundreds, and we were bowled out for 80, and that was the end of that. So they're the blokes that are going to play for Australia. But I then went to England and did a gap year, and I probably played the equivalent of first grade in England for a few different clubs, and that was because my wife was English and she was doing university, so we were over there when I was playing, and I played with a lot of blokes that were county cricketers or county seconds cricketers, and then they'd play with us on a Saturday, and then on the Sunday they might be playing the 40 over league back in the day. So decent standard, batsman, not much of a bowler, slips fielder, not very... I'm a bit like Kawaja in the field, like just hide me somewhere. So I'm in a situation where it's just been a huge part of my life. I only just retired just before my 50th birthday, but in saying that, the Masters at Manly want me to play now some 2020 stuff, and I said, as long as it's 2020... I love it, you know. But
you're never retired, Gussie.
Not properly.
Not from cricket.
No. Well, I didn't want to play home. I didn't want to have that 70 overs on a Saturday if you lose the toss. And then the next week it might be rained out. Then you lose the toss the next week. But fielding is just not for me.
Yeah.
So I'm 50 years old now. I just couldn't see the ball very well. Blokes were trying to knock my head off, and they wanted me to talk about it on the radio on the Monday. I love my teammates. I still go on the end of season trip.
Yeah.
But the Monavale Mullets, which is where my career is sort of finished in inverted commas, just a great bunch of blokes who love cricket, you know, love it to death.
Well, there's a couple of names in there that have a link to Kingsgrove. Hamish, did you see Gus in the shop there during the day?
Yeah. Like obviously you've come in and you've done a few things at Kingsgrove now. And what I picked up from that is that there's obviously an association with our business that goes back a little bit.
Your catalogue was like porn to me. when that catalogue arrived, I was like, because my dad had left the family home when I was about 10. So the guilt that he had, my father, and we've spoken about it now that I'm 50-year-old myself, he felt so guilty. So my brother and I just used that to our own advantage. So the Kingsgrove Sports Centre... catalogue would arrive, and I'd just circle everything, you know, and in the end I go, okay, no, I don't want that. I'm going to stick with Grey Nick, so I'm going to get the Grey Nick scoop, and then I'll get the Grey Nick pads to go with the Grey Nick everything else.
Yeah. So it was your Bible for a few months there.
Love it. I mean, the Playboy went away for a day, for a couple of months, and the King, and then when you opened up in Artarmon, that was bonus for me because I didn't have to go all the way to Kingsgrove. You know, being on the North Shore.
Gilly. Even after he retired a few years ago, Gilly, Adam Gilchrist, tweeted, you know, the Kingsgrove Sports Centre catalogue's arrived. I feel like a 13-year-old. And it apparently got seen by however million people.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable.
We could get him to
But
do it
that
every year.
catalogue,
That'd be good.
Please,
but it's great.
if you're listening.
From my point of view, and certainly from Harry's point of view, it's great that the catalogue still has that effect on. We're into probably our 3rd or 4th generation of cricketers within the sometimes same family.
Yeah.
And it still has the same effect on one one person's grandchild, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have to give Nick a lot of props for the work that he's done on changing the face of that catalogue.
Here we go. Yeah, I have had the privilege of putting a new face, sort of kind of refreshing the look and feel of the catalog. But I think it's cool that it has such a historied, following among cricketers in this area. It's almost like it's become its own sort of institution.
Oh, for sure. There's no doubt in my mind and it still arrives now at Eleonora. My son looks at it. I look at it. We've got circles on it. Imagine this. How much are bats now? I want to get that grey, Nick. All these different discussions. When we did the Cricket Tragic out there with Harry and he went through it all, we did the same thing with An Aussie Goes Balmy, which was my first TV show all the way back in, I think, 2006-07.
Yeah, so I remember it.
Everything I've ever done has always been linked with Kingsgrove. So we've got a great affiliation, and my dad, no doubt, has probably paid for a few of your teeth.
I'd say some of my education.
Yeah.
I'm still not sure about my education.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
That's actually was my first introduction to you, Gus, because the first time I came to Australia was that summer, 2006-07. So I'm watching you in the middle of the Barmy Army. So if Montin doesn't get $1 million here, I'm going to shave my head. And how'd that go?
Yeah, it didn't go well. I got my head shaved under a very drunken Barmy Army across the road at the Trots from the Wacker. But I was trying. I mean, that series, we gave you such a thumping.
Yeah, thanks.
That I was doing my absolute best to try to lose every bet because it was starting to get a bit embarrassing. But you were so bad, that's the only one I think I lost.
Well, to be honest, the first, my hero has always been Freddie Flintoff, as you can probably imagine. And the first time I ever got to meet him face to face was walking off the SCG, having just lost 5-0.
Yeah.
And I could tell the look on his face. Obviously, he wasn't happy. You're not going to be happy if you've just been pumped 5-0.
Yeah.
And you're at the other side of the planet.
Yeah.
To be fair to him, he signed a couple of autographs to the kids in front of me. There's one kid that wanted a high five, but I'm looking at his face, and through what he's done in recent years, coming back to what the topic of the show is going to be about, he produced a program in 2012 called Hidden Side of Sport. And he spoke about that series and the effect that it had on him.
Yeah.
And I think it was during that show that he mentioned that cricket has the highest rate of suicides of any sport in the world, amateur, professional, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And obviously we're in the cricket world, so we may notice that kind of news more than in other sports.
Yeah.
Why do you think that cricket is such a mentally taxing sport?
Well, it's a very difficult game, isn't it? I mean, if you're a batsman, you get nicked off first ball, your whole day is done and dusted, a lot of time to think about, or you get a bad umpiring decision. Batsmen very rarely get a second chance, so batters find it a very difficult game, where most other games you get another serve, or you get a bowler gets another delivery, or a baseball batter gets another innings, whatever it might be. But it's just, in cricket, it's just so much time spent just thinking.
Yeah.
And us blokes thinking is just not a good thing.
Well, if you think about it, let's excuse 5% of the cricketers who have made reasonably high levels. But even those cricketers, if you're playing cricket, you are actually probably failing more than you're succeeding.
Yep.
If you're a club cricketer or whatnot, if you're playing first grade, third grade, whatever, most of the time you're ending up with, let's say, 1 for 30, or you've scored 10 or 12 runs or a duck or whatever. You're failing, and you're spending 6 hours doing it.
More though, because you're there early now. Then you've got, and all the preparation, all the thinking time as well.
Yeah.
I remember having a season where things went well, and my life then was well.
Yeah.
You know, what happened on a Saturday and Sunday, and in England on a Wednesday comp as well, playing a bit of 2020 back in the day. If my week went well, cricket-wise, that would just set my whole life up. And 100%. I was at the time I was with my girlfriend, now my wife, and life's better.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you have a bit of a dodgy thing, and sometimes it's not your fault. You get a bad call or whatever it might be, and all of a sudden people, first thing they ask you if they know you're a cricketer, how'd you go today? You walk into a pub and you're like, got strangled down the leg side. I got a dodgy to say, of course, you know, and that whole thing, and they expect that banter, but really it just knocks you around because you may not bat for another couple of weeks, depending on weather and so forth. So I think it knocks you for 6, and I think we've got too much time on our hands. And any time a bloke is having time on his hands to think and he can't then share those thoughts is trouble. And most blokes won't want to go into a team and go, hey, boys, I'm having an awful day. this is what's going on in my life, because they don't want to bring the whole mood down, right? So they just put on the mask, they puff the chest out, and they go, you know what, I'm just going to get on with it. So there's a lot of that going on. I did a cricket club, I've done 3 or 4 now, in the Sydney grade competition. Every single one of those boys at some stage has either got depression or anxiety. And these are blokes who are trying to make it, or blokes who have made it, who have come back, trying to give back, or just young blokes just enjoying the game. It's a real issue, and we need to teach those blokes that it's okay not to be okay, and we need to teach those blokes to find someone to talk to, because if it's banging around in our head, Charlie, it's not going to work for us.
No, and something that you mentioned there a second ago is akin to what I mentioned the last show that I was on, in that you were with your girlfriend, now your wife, over in England, and you had that balance outside of cricket. I found I started playing much better cricket when I met my girlfriend, who is now my wife, as well. So that life outside of cricket, having that balance, having that perspective to not invest all your time solely into cricket. Because up until that point, up until I met Jess, my wife, my world revolved around cricket and cricket only. And let's face it, I was never going to go professional. I'm a half-decent cricketer. I'm not any better than that. But I was never going to go professional, but I still held on to that belief that I could.
Yeah.
And realistically, that wasn't going to happen. So investing so heavily in cricket that when it goes wrong just puts you in a bad headspace. And
Of course it does.
You meet someone. So obviously it's not necessarily going to be possible for every single person to find their one and only woman or man or whatever it might be at an early age, or that can happen any time in life. So how can guys and girls playing cricket find a balance outside the sport?
Yeah, well, they've got to be taught right. I've always thought parenting is one thing that's, extremely important. Everyone now talks about young kids doing this and that. Well, where are the parents in this, sort of saying, well, you need to get a balance right in your own life? Like, there's way too much focus now put on HSC, way too much focus put on all that sort of stuff. Kids have got to be kids, and you've got to have a balance all the way through. So I say to my kids, any mark over 50, then you haven't quite nailed your balance. And people are going, what are you talking about? You want them to get 100 out of 100 or 80 out of 100. I go, no, mark over 50, make the sports team, have a couple of good mates, make sure that they're in some sort of group where they're having a bit of fun. That is what childhood's all about, not necessarily this absolute focus on absolutely nailing everything all the time. So that's the way that my wife and I have parented. You want the best for your kids, but you want them to be balanced and happy.
Well, I can see that is the problem with some of these high-level cricketers who have come out. They've basically said it comes to a point where what the struggle is the pressure they've put on themselves, which obviously comes from other places, maybe in growing up and whatnot. I think the important thing here, as parents in particular, is teaching awareness, but also making sure that we don't push our kids and almost in a way live vicariously through them, but for them to have that balance where there's an understanding, look, it's not the be-all and end-all, and you've also got to have other things in your life that can provide that balance, if you know what I mean.
Well, I spoke to Steve Smith when we started the whole process of him coming out with My Gotcha for Life Foundation to the schools as part of his punishment out of South Africa. And I remember his dad said to him, this is going to be good for you because you can have something outside of cricket for you to focus on. So this is something you want to really get good at and you want to really focus on, because when you have times where you're not playing cricket, once he's back in the team, and that's going to be, sooner rather than later, you'd think, with the once this injury gets sorted out. So you're thinking 10 months of the year he's going to do that, have a month off. He can put a whole other month into saving lives of young kids. Because I've left schools with him and had phone calls from the headmaster or headmistress saying, a couple of boys are now up at the office. They heard what Steve said. They loved the fact he was vulnerable, open and honest, and they're now going to seek help. I said, you've saved lives, Steve. And that's been a big eye-opener to him. So even the best in the world, Australian captain, even he had the balance wrong.
Absolutely.
So it's a difficult balance to get, but you need to have it. And if you're talking to people and you're explaining how you're feeling, you're more likely to get a better decision. If you're thinking about all this yourself and just with your dad, you may not get the balance right.
We mentioned that as you get up to that level, you've obviously got to invest more mentally and physically into the sport that you're playing. There are examples of, top level athletes coming out and saying, look, I've got a problem here.
Yeah.
Part of the reason for me getting into this topic is my own experiences, of course, but I've seen examples of friends and people I've played against who have taken their own lives because they didn't get the help they needed in time. The one that springs to mind to me right now is a guy called Tom Allen, who was contracted to Warwickshire. Used to play in Devon League against him all the time, year in, year out, and I got on really well with him. And in fact, a year or two before he took his own life, we were messaging trying to get him over to Australia to come play for my club, Macquarie University. And I think he ended up going to Perth. Now, I don't know the exact circumstances that he decided to take his own life, but it was clear that there was a deficit there of getting him the help he needed in time. Steve Smith, Dave Warner, Cameron Bancroft, obviously coming off the back of South Africa in a terrible situation. I think there was a responsibility on the media and Cricket Australia and Cricket New South Wales. Okay, they've got to dish out the punishment, but they've also got to take care of these guys' mental health.
Yeah.
And to that end, I think they were very harsh on them at first, but since then they've been very good. They've left them alone. They've left them to recover. And the fact that you're working with Steve Smith and he's working with your Gotcha for Life Foundation is fantastic. And when he goes back into the Australian squad, do you have anyone else lined up to do that sort of work with you, or is that something that Steve will continue?
Well, Steve will definitely do it when he's not playing cricket, but there won't be as much time for him to do that, Charles. But I've now got a string of ambassadors because people have seen the work we're doing now. They understand what we're trying to do. We've got a pretty simple message, which is it's okay not to be okay, and find someone you can talk to. Now, when you talk about mental health, it can get a little clunky, it can get a little highbrow, and people sort of tend to switch off. I know a lot of my mates, if I started talking about the true intricacies of the mental health and the mind and how it all works, they would just glaze over. So if you just say, find someone you can talk to, and it's okay not to be okay, and share your experiences, most blokes can sort of understand and cop that. We need to simplify mental health because at the moment it's everywhere. Like I said, it's the number one killer, but there's so many young kids. I spoke to a lady from a health fund the other day, and she said now it's like 400% more teenagers that she's signing off on for doctors to talk to around their mind, not physical. So it's not the physical now, it's the mental stuff. So if that's happening in one fund, then that's going to be happening in all these other funds. So it's a massive issue and a massive problem. And we just need to sort of stomp on it as quick as we can because losing 6 a day is just un-Australian and ridiculous.
Does anyone know when it's time to seek help? Because there's obviously feeling down, feeling blue, and then there's clinical depression.
Yeah.
How do you know, I mean, do we have an answer? When is it time, I think I need to talk to someone? Because I think that's probably the big one is if I go and talk to someone, they'll think my problems are small compared to people that are taking their lives, but obviously it escalates from there.
Well, that's the problem, Hamish, is that we're trying to deal with blokes. Like if I've got, I know it's hard on a podcast, but you just think a line, and during every day we dip above and below that line, which is like your normal, like you're having a half decent day, that's the line.
Medium.
Medium. So something happens, you get a phone call, that order is not going to arrive for another couple of weeks. You've got 100 people waiting for those bats, so you dip down under that line until you work out how you can do it, and then your life, and then it goes back up again, you make a compromise, and so your life is continually dipping up and under that medium line all the time. What we're saying is get your Gotcha for Life friend when you're normal, when everything is going along well. If things become really dark, hopefully by then you've already got your Gotcha for Life friend. You go, mate, it's getting a bit dark on me now. I'm really struggling with this. Then your friend helps you to go to a GP, get yourself a mental health plan, whatever it might be. So we're trying to keep blokes above that medium mental health line rather than be dealing in the crisis, which is your lifelines and so forth, which Gotcha for Life also always support. We've got to change the analogy to know that it's going to happen. So let's fix it up before it actually happens.
So at this stage, most men do not know that. No. They haven't put in a system into place.
That's right. We've got 1 million friends. We've got 1 million mates, but not many friends.
Yeah, exactly.
So especially cricket clubs, right? People listen to this now, they go, well, there's Jono and there's Robbo and there's blah and there's blah and there's blah. Which one of those blokes can I go to on a Monday after the game and go, Can I talk to you about something that's got nothing to do with cricket? In fact, it's got something to do with me and how I actually feel. Have you got that one person you can have that awkward conversation with? Because I know that men will talk as long as we build a safe environment. We've got to build that safe environment. And at the moment, blokes are more likely to puff out the chest and say everything's okay and not actually ask for the help.
Yep. Now, I got to be honest, Gussie, my one experience of going that far was here in Australia. It was only in the last 12 months, and it didn't go well. The situation was that I live in a block of flats, an apartment block out near Parramatta, and one day I heard a horrible noise, a massive bang. I thought something had fallen over on the roof, and we're the top level. I'm the only one to a key to the roof, so I went outside to see what the hell it was. I got outside my door. There's a pair of shoes on the floor. There's a pair of keys on the wall. I instinctively look over it, and there's a bloke face down on the floor. He'd let himself go from outside my door. I go into, oh shit, what do I do mode.
Yeah.
Ambulance, this, that, and the other. I'll cut a long story short. He died a couple of days later in hospital. It turned out it was a deliberate act. He'd been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and a few days later just decided he couldn't deal with it.
Yeah.
The police that came to deal with that gave me a victim support card and said, phone these people if you need counselling. They'll look after you, which I already knew within the minutes of making the 999 call, or sorry, 000 call in this country.
Yep.
I would need that assistance. I would need that counselling at some stage. So I phoned victim support, and they said, right, we'll send you a form, or you can download this form from this website, fill out the form, send it to us. So I did that. 3 weeks later, they come back to me with there's nothing we can really do for you because our support is for victims of violent crime, and you technically didn't see anything and you weren't the victim of a violent crime. And I was like, well, what the hell? And it's taken you guys 3 weeks to tell me this. The time I needed that sort of mental help was in that first 24 to 48 hours.
Yeah.
I took it upon myself to go and see my GP. He gave me a referral for a counsellor. I can't remember what they were called. Rung them to make an appointment because they didn't answer the phone, left a voicemail.
God, it sounds like you had an awful experience.
Well, waited 2 more days and went back to the GP and said, look, I haven't heard back from these guys. If you got anyone else? And he gave me someone else. And eventually I got appointments there. And it's fine. Now, I'm quite aware of when I'm up and above that median line or down below it. So I was quite self-aware that this is the help I need. This is how I need to get it.
Yeah.
And I was quite persistent about getting it and making sure I got what I needed. My point is that there are some guys out there who aren't that persistent, who do need that help, that won't recognise the signs. And if they reach out for help and don't get a response, what are they going to do?
Yeah, the system is absolutely broken, and you've proven that just through your situation. And unfortunately, no matter how many times people pop up posters or give you a card or give you a pamphlet and say this is a way to deal with it, it looks on paper that's a perfect thing to do, but you've proven it. It's wrong, and that's why I go down to Canberra, speak to ministers, and say the whole system is completely you-know-whatted. Well, because it doesn't work.
That's sort of half the reason that this is the topic we wanted to discuss with you in this show, in that I think, based on that one experience, that the system is broken.
Yeah, it is broken. 100% it is.
I think that whether it's us or someone else, we need to do something in order to fix that now. Get those guys the mental help they need in a timely fashion.
Yeah.
Now, why we wanted to speak to you about that is you've got your Gotcha for Life campaign. Why do you think it is this way at the moment? Why do you think it takes so long?
Because it's run by government, you know, and if it's not run by government, it's run by private, and then it's way too expensive for a lot of people as well. So you've got the two sides of it. I mean, what we're trying to do with the Gotcha for Life is actually try to prevent these situations, like prevent that man actually doing what he did. I mean, that's a slightly different one because he didn't want to have the fight. He knew that he was going to die. He might have been given a bad diagnosis. That's a difficult one in its own right because he decided to do what he did. But the simple fact is most blokes, if they haven't got that type of situation and they're just feeling awful and anxiety and depressed and stuff, if they've got this Gotcha for Life program in place in their head that they're sharing it with someone else, then all of a sudden you're a team dealing with it, a community dealing with it, rather than individually. Because we know what we're like as blokes. We just make really bad decisions if we're put under pressure, and we don't share them. You know, so what you're talking about there is government having to sort themselves out. What we need at Gotcha for Life is funds to get into every school, so those blokes who end up taking their life because they're depressed or anxiety have had some. Hamish is so popular. That those blokes have got the training at school to be able to have the emotional words to have the conversation, which they haven't been given by their dad, haven't been given by their granddad. You know why? Because they had no idea. They were never given it themselves.
No, that's true. Look, I don't know that I've actually told anyone this, so I'm going to reveal something exclusive to the YouTube viewers and our podcast listeners. In that back in England, when I had some personal stuff going on, there were 4 or 5 times. So where my cricket club is in Devon, there's a road that goes past it, and then behind it there's a bridge that goes over a road. 4 or 5 times I went up to that bridge and just stood there for 5-10 minutes thinking about it, based on what I'd experienced on and off a cricket field. I think it was when I read Marcus Trescothick's book for the first time called Coming Back to Me, where he detailed what exactly went on with him and how he hated travelling, basically. He's from Somerset and he didn't even like going as far as Torquay. So for him to get to Heathrow and then, be curled up in a corner of a bookstore at WH Smith before getting on a plane, that's just one step further. That gave me a bit of perspective. Well, hang on, there's guys out there that got it worse than you.
Yeah.
And the thoughts that are running through your mind, this is selfish. I'm stood on this bridge thinking, this is selfish. If I do this, I let my mum down, I let my dad down, I let my granddad down, let my sister down, let everyone down. And that's what brought me back. Not everyone gets to do that. Not everyone realizes that in time. There's a guy whose name escapes me who he threw himself off the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge, and he survived. He got picked up by a boat, broken bones, he survived. And he said that his first thought as soon as he let go was, I didn't want to do that.
Every person
Instant
who
regret.
attempts, who doesn't survive, who does survive, fortunately unsuccessful attempt, say exactly the same thing. I spoke to that guy from San Francisco, and
you've met him. You've spoken to him in person.
That's right. And there was a tour boat that had gone underneath and chopped up the water. So it wasn't quite as cement and hard.
Yeah.
And he says, and this hasn't actually been absolutely ticked off, but he reckons that the people on the tour boat looked down, saw it, got the tour boat to come back, but there was actually some seals in the harbour in San Francisco that were coming just to find out what this thing was in the water. And they were sort of just nodding their nose at him and keeping him above the water.
Oh, really?
Wow.
So that story, and he's turned into a great motivational speaker now.
Yeah. How many men in their life think about suicide at some stage? Is this something that happens to everyone, 3 out of 4 blokes?
I think more than you think at some stage.
Because you tell your story, and obviously you're a lot closer to most others, but I just wonder in my own situation, it was only after I watched one of your Man Up previews or
Episodes
that I found myself actually almost in tears. And I thought back to a time where, I had a few of those little moments myself. But I always felt, it's kind of normal, just part of growing up, adolescence, teenage, dealing with things. And I didn't think anything more of it. But I just wonder out there if there's so many kids in a very similar situation. Are they 1 out of 3? Or is it something that
I would say nearly all.
Yeah.
I'd say
that's kind of what I'm trying to get at.
So I think most blokes would have some sort of feeling, and I'm sorry, and thank you for sharing that, because that is not an easy thing to do, Charles. So thank you, and I sat with that and let you have that moment because
that's good.
it was important for you to say it and to have that. It's a death of loneliness, right? So why aren't we talking to people about how they feel? Like Charles be able to say that then now. You have a different look at him no matter what now. There'll be something there when you walk past him in the shop or you're doing something with him. You're just look after him just that 1% more because you know he's been through something. Yeah. So if everyone shares those sort of moments, if everyone sits back and goes, you know what, things aren't going quite as well as they look, and I want to tell you, this is my situation. You're not telling the world, like Charles just said. All I'm just saying, tell one person that you're going through a tough time so they can check with you in the morning and to make sure you're all right. Yesterday I did a keynote speak at this, there's about 4,000 people, and I said, okay, about halfway through it, I said, everyone get your phones out. And they were like, oh, I wonder what this is about. I said, everyone text one person in the world that you love them, you miss them, and you've been thinking about them. Send it off and then turn on your buzzer, as your buzzer is home, going off this entire podcast. You disgrace.
Where's your professionalism?
I appreciate you calling him out so I don't have to. It's really great.
I think you just lost your discount, mate.
I'm going to Dad.
Member for life, mate.
So I said, turn on your beeping bits. Yeah. So when they respond back, everyone will be able to hear that there's a response back. So I said, I'll give you a minute. We sat there in silence. I said, is everyone done? Not quite yet, done. I said, everyone done? Everyone's done. And I said, and let's just sit and wait. Beep, bzz, 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 bzz. 4,000, right? Yeah. So a lot of phones, a lot of messages gone out. For about 2 or 3 minutes, you just one over the other. I said, see what you've done there? You've connected with someone. You've made them feel that, I mean something to someone. Yeah. Why aren't we more kind like that? Why don't we do more things like that? Why do we just assume that everything's okay and that my problem's worse than your problem and the bloke who cuts you off in the traffic is actually a blah, blah, blah? He could have purely just been thinking about something and gone, oh, Jesus, you just don't know. Yeah. Yeah. So just be kind, understand the situation, and we need to educate our young kids to be able to do that. So that's what Gotcha for Life does as one of the things that we do. And I think that's, they say, the children are our future. I think there was a song written about it. Yeah. That's exactly right. We get the kids to learn about it, and then the kids teach the dads teach the granddads, and eventually we'll turn this ship around. Because at the moment, as I said, 6 a day is
100%. I think
a disgrace.
It's, like we said right at the top of the show, it's got to start happening in sport more too. I think the coaches have got to understand their role in all of this. And they've got to try and educate themselves or be educated by the associations that educate the coaches and say, this is actually now a responsibility of coaches, because your little athletes will probably feel more comfortable talking to you than they might their own parents and friends.
Yeah, well, the Gotcha for Life program's now gone into Manly, it's gone into Penrith, it's gone into Warringah, which is the green shield that feeds into the Manly area, because that's the area where I live. So my son played reps under 13s, 14s. I coached his side. So I know a lot of those blokes, and they're right into it. I think the New South Wales Cricket Association should get Gotcha for Life to go in, and we don't need to be paid. Yeah. This is all free. I'm offering all this for nothing. Yeah. So we can do all of this for nothing into every cricket association in Australia.
I'm smiling because it's only 2 years ago that I phoned Cricket New South Wales myself and said the same thing. And I won't say the name of who I spoke to, but I said to him, hey, whatever his name is, mental health in professional sport has been covered several times on TV, but there's not much to do with amateur sport. Can you get involved? And he basically just gave me short shrift. He said, well, what have you got? I said, well, nothing. This is something that we need to do together. He said, oh, come back to me when you've got something.
Yeah.
I was like, well, hang on.
Looks like you might have
Charles,
something.
We've got something.
Yeah.
We've got something.
We've got something. So that's, I'm going to target this right now at Cricket New South Wales, Cricket Australia, whoever it might be. Gus is offering this. Jump on it.
Yep.
The number of people losing their lives to suicide, mental health issues, whatever it might be, is way too high. You've got to do something about it. You've got to start now. We've already mentioned you just sending a text message out just saying something as simple as I love you.
Yeah. Just connect.
Are You OK Day is a great initiative. Just ask one person, are you okay? Tell them it's okay not to be okay. I implore Cricket New South Wales, even the Shires cricket, grade cricket, whatever a cricket association, jump on this. Gus is offering it.
Whatever you want, whenever you need, whatever you want. And that Are You OK Day is awesome because it brings awareness. But I think we're all aware of that now. Are you okay? When someone asks me if I'm okay, whether I'm not okay or I am okay, I think we've covered it off now that us men can BS our way through that. Yeah, mate, no problem at all. I'm flying. How are you going? It's as simple as we've worked that out now. It's the second and the third question. It's like, no, home, there's something going on, or I really do care and I love you. How are things? And you go, mate, I'm fine. I go, why are they fine? How's everything with the family? You know, it's you actually sound like you're intruding into someone else's world. It's awkward because I don't want to put you in an awkward situation, but I don't want to be at your funeral either.
Yeah.
So if you love me enough as a bloke, and I'm not looking, you and my relationship could do this, but your best friend in the world, if he just kept handing you to the point where you go, mate, what are you doing? I love you.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure you're okay, and I'm not going to be fobbed off with, yeah, I'm fine, mate. It's why don't we put that effort into the friendship rather than we going down to have a net session and work on your back cut?
Yeah.
Work on that.
I'd be curious to ask you, Gus, because there's such a prevalent attitude toward not sharing your feelings, especially among men in Australia.
Yeah.
What sort of encouragement would you give somebody who's maybe looking, if they're interested in taking care of their own mental health, or maybe that of their friends?
Yeah.
If they are struggling to find someone who's receptive to that kind of conversation, do you have any words of encouragement you might give to a person like that to help them continue trying to find that gotcha for life mate that they might be looking for?
Just keep going. Keep going. I know people will, I know a couple of blokes that I spoke to, they just went, what are you talking about? You taking the piss? And I go, no. And I had to really, and I went, okay, he's not going to be the guy.
Yeah.
It's not going to be the guy always that you first pick. He's not going to necessarily be your best friend, but he's going to be someone that knows you. Or you go, you know what? I'm going to go and find myself someone that I can talk to professionally. That might be, or you just need to see someone once a month professionally that might be able to give you the right habits to be able to work through. But don't give up. I know a mate of mine had to go to 6 different psychiatrists before they got the right one. So 6 different counsellors had to be seen before he went, this one gets me. So it doesn't, even if you tick all the boxes, it doesn't necessarily work for you. So you got to keep working at it, like I said to my wife, babe, I'm going to go and see this counsellor. Why can't you talk to me? Because I want to talk to them about things I don't want to talk to you about.
Sure.
That's an awkward conversation.
Yeah.
Because she goes, you're my soulmate. I love you. I talk to you. I go, that's awesome. But I'm sorry, babe. I'm getting really under a lot of pressure here, and I feel like I need to talk to someone professionally. Eventually, she got over it, but they're awkward conversations, and you're out of control. Yeah. We don't like being out of control as blokes. We like to keep everything nice and controlled and worked out. That's what cricket is. Put our pads all back together and pack our kit back up again, make it all nice, put it in our car. That's sort of the type of people we are.
Is that what cricketers do?
Oh, you're one of those.
Now I know.
And it does, as much as we've said that it's important that people recognise the signs in themselves, they've got to recognise the signs in other people as well. Like even on the way to the studio here this morning, I got a message from a good mate of mine back in England, probably my best mate, and he said, Charlie...
Talking about the Ashes and the fact that you're going to get your asses kicked?
No, not at all. He doesn't want to
talk about
Because
your side is average.
You're going to. The average at the moment, but they'll lift.
Let's talk it up. Let's talk up. Anderson, is he coming to Zimmer frame? Anyway.
I'm just going to let that one through.
Sorry, Charlie.
I'm just going to say, we actually are probably coming to the close of our time with Gus. I think Gus has got another appointment to get to here shortly. So maybe as we're getting out, as we're closing the podcast, are there you've got a Cliffside Festival fun run with Gus for Life coming up. You want to talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah, thank you. The 16th and 17th of March. The 16th is Hugh Jackman's movie, The Greatest Showman. Free night. Everyone just turn up.
Hey, I hear you're good mates with Hugh Jackman.
I know the guy, you know.
You know what?
The problem with him is he's all over me. Like, let me get on with my own career, mate.
Now, the question is, how did he go, bat and ball?
He wasn't too bad. So we played all the way together, and then he didn't quite make the first in 5th form. In 6th form, he was there or thereabouts. He was sort of in the possibles, not the probables.
He got the craps and went to acting instead.
Well, he then played the last 3 games in the first, and you needed to play 3 games in the first to get like the cap, which was like the baggy green of our school. Yeah. He just kept playing across the line, and too early in his innings, kept getting top edges, caught mid-wicket, caught and bowled. If you played to his areas and pitched up, he was a beautiful driver and cutter of the ball, but just lacked patience. Yeah. And then played a few sort of celebrity games after and has done pretty well in those games. Okay. I remember he hit Tony Donamate, he told me, back over his head at the MCG for 6. And then Tony Donamate bowled the next delivery about twice as fast and got him out. And he's going, And then he worked out later it's probably not best to at a charity game when
Yeah.
someone's trying to be nice to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And he faced Warney, of course, on Channel 9.
Yeah.
But that day they rang me and said, "Is Hugh at the ground?" I said, "He is." I said, "Do you reckon he could come down?" It was Luke Ricketson, the ex-Rooster, who was working for Nine in the cricket show. And he said, "Yeah, no, I can. I'll let him know." And he goes, "Warney wants to bowl to him in the cricket show and Mark Nicholas is going to organise it all." I said, "Yeah, no problem." So I rang him. He said, "Oh, mate, of course, I'd love to face Warney. I've got no gear, though." Yeah. And he goes, "I've got no undies on either."
No protector
So if
on.
you see him, so he has a protector on, but if you watch that footage ever, it is running down his thigh and up
Yikes.
around his inner leg and stuff. So he never felt he could properly give a proper performance. But
No wrong-uns, Warney.
yeah,
Well,
well,
yeah, so we derailed off a huge Agman, but tell us about the fun run.
yeah,
Let's
so
learn about
the
that.
16th is Jacko's show, and then the Sunday, and if people would like to register, go to the gotchaforlife.org or the cliffsiderun.com.au, and all the money goes to Gotcha for Life, and we're going to put all these programs together. And it's a 3K, 5K, 10K half marathon. It's a festival of food and drink, and I'd love families to come along on the Saturday night and the Sunday and just have a day without any screens. Without the iPad, without the phones, and just be out there in and amongst it. We've got a swim on at the same time, which is all booked out, fortunately. But I'm trying to do something for the Northern Beaches area, and that's what I'm sort of, I'm committing the rest of my life to, outside of my work, is to get Gotcha for Life up and change the narrative, because at the moment, it's not okay to be not okay. And I want to make sure that everyone just take the pressure off kids and men to go, okay, I'm going to check in with a mate. It can't be as bad as that. And then you realise that everyone has got these problems, and then you're a part of a big dysfunctional family.
Well, someone should take the opportunity to say personally, thank you for all the work you're doing for this wonderful
Thanks,
cause.
Hamish. Thanks, Charlie.
Yeah, man.
Hey, good on you, mate.
Thanks so
buddy.
much for having us, being
Thanks
on the
for
podcast.
joining us.
Charlie, if you want to tell our viewers and listeners where they can reach
Absolutely.
us.
I'd like to also invite some audience participation. If you think that you can help in any way, please don't hesitate to get in contact with us. We've got the hashtag KSC Podcast. We're on YouTube, we're on iTunes, we're on Spotify, Facebook at Kingsgrove Sports Centre, Instagram at Kingsgrove Sports. But at Twitter, they can't handle the plural, so it's just at Kingsgrove Sport. Thank you very much, Gus. It's
Charlie.
been an absolute pleasure to have you here. Actually, it's been a pleasure for us to be here.
Pleasure,
It's a
pleasure
be
for you to
invited
have
by
us.
you.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure for me to have you guys, and congratulations on the podcast. I just love it when the Kingsgrove Sports Centre. When the catalogue comes, it's a very exciting time.
We're going to send you a box.
Yeah.
That'd be
A whole
great.
box of catalogues.
That'd be great. Thanks, guys.
No worries.
thanks
Thank
for
you very
joining us.
much.